Gauri, you can start.
The exam of life is a difficult and challenging one. The guidance helps in clearing it. Similarly, some exams you take require prerequisite knowledge. Greetings to our dear audience and our esteemed panelists who are connected with us here today. I hope that you all are safe and sound at your homes. I am Gauri Vadera from Fair Gaze, your host for the day. Do share this link with your family and friends so they can also get into some insights from our experienced speakers and learn more from the session of Fair Talks today on all about IELTS and SAT. So moving further, when it comes to overseas test, IELTS, that is International English Language Testing System, and SAT, Scholastic Assessment Test, are the renowned ones, which are actually pretty useful in getting a degree or to get into an institution. With growing competition and interest of the recent generation to study overseas and in a different country, tests or exams like these have gained popularity. Yet, for many, it's hazy and unclear so as to what preparation, eligibility, qualifications are required to ace these tests. Who should take them? So, in the end, how do we face the challenges that follow? Today, through this discussion, we will be bringing into light more of some perspectives by renowned educationists and professionals who are well acquainted with the idea and will present their views. So, having said the same, we will be moving on to the introduction of our panelists. We are delighted to have Mrs. Charu Srivastava ma'am here with us today, who is the principal of the Samarth Public School, Delhi. Ma'am will be the moderator of today's session. I heartily welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming, ma'am. We are glad to have Mr. Gautam Chokar with us today. Sir is an Australia and New Zealand immigration specialist. Pleased to have you, sir.
Likewise, thank you so very much, Ms. Gauri. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, sir. We are happy to have the presence of Mr. Christy John. Sir is a licensed immigration advisor and director of Immigrants Limited. Honored to have you, sir.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. We are honored to have Ms. Swati Singh, ma'am. Ma'am is an overseas education consultant. Thank you, ma'am, for gracing us with your presence, even when you're attending a really important event.
It's a pleasure always, Gauri, and I am sorry that I could not be present. I would not be able to contribute as much as I wanted to initially, but definitely always a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much for your presence, ma'am. It's well enough for us. So, before proceeding towards the discussion, we would like to share with you all the results of the survey recently conducted by Fair Gaze, which received responses from connected parents, teachers, and schools. So, as I told you, the Fair Gaze research revealed some very interesting trends. Over 64% of the respondents are aware about IELTS and SAT. 50% people know the eligibility criteria for the exam, whereas the other 50% people are unsure about it. However, more than 64% opined that SAT having no upper limit is a bad practice. More than 57% respondents are aware about IELTS online testing system and find it a good way to test their potential. Interestingly, 50% of the people find IELTS more important than SAT, and the rest 50% think otherwise. An overwhelming 78% agree or partially agree that employers prefer employees who have cleared these tests. About 57% people were interested in attempting IELTS before SAT or any other exam. So these are the survey results. And now I would like to pass on the mic to Ms. Charu ma'am for taking the discussion further. Charu ma'am, the mic is all yours.
Thank you so much, Gauri. Good evening to everyone, and on behalf of Fairgaze, I welcome all the eminent panelists. As a moderator, I really feel that it's a great opportunity to interact with everyone and ask questions. That's like the safe zone of having a discussion, but also gives me and my curious self, a chance to keep asking questions, those which are already listed and those which cross my mind. So I feel really fortunate. Thank you, Fairgaze. Thank you, Gauri, for introducing me. And being a principal of a school, I always feel that there's this question that arises in the minds of all the children who pass out, is that what next? So this is a great forum of deciding what you want to do next in your life after your 14 years of schooling. So IELTS and SAT is something which is commonplace, yet needs a lot of clarity. So I'm looking forward to a lot of learning that can go back to with me for a lot of teachers and for a lot of parents and students. And I always feel that I am also a language teacher, so it gives me immense pleasure, because a lot of these examinations, so to say, which give opportunities for the children to study abroad and to do their graduations and post graduation in various other countries, that English not only is a language of communication on an international level, but is also a medium of excellence to excel. So that it gets that gets children very excited when they learn the language also, that there's meaning to learning language. With that, I would love to start the discussion and taking much time. So my first question goes to Mr. John. And sir, the question for you is, what is the importance of good English language standard to be able to find relevant job offers from employers in an English speaking country?
Thank you, Charu. I would like to first express my thanks to Fairgaze for inviting me to this Fair Talk session. Look forward to the next 1 hour. So to answer your question, having good English language standard is very critical for migrants to find relevant job offers from good employers. Now, I've been living in New Zealand for the last 17 years, and earlier I was in Australia for 3 years. My answer would be in the context of life for migrants in New Zealand and Australia. Now, New Zealand and Australia are hugely multicultural nations. We are home to migrants from more than 120 plus different countries, and English is the primary language used by all the migrants from all the countries to communicate. The same would apply to other English-speaking countries too, like Canada, US, and UK. Let me explain this in more detail, but the context would be for New Zealand and Australia, because I have been here. So I'm a licensed immigration advisor for New Zealand for the last 13 years. We mostly process work and residence visas for migrants who are already onshore in the country. Now, most of these migrants, how did they land here? They came here to study as international students for higher education, for gaining qualifications. Their long-term goal is to get permanent residence, or what everyone knows as PR, in New Zealand or in Australia. But first, they need to find a job offer. Unless they have a skilled job offer, in most situations, they cannot get residence. And this is where exactly the English language requirement comes. Every time a migrant applies for a job in New Zealand or Australia, they are competing directly with New Zealand-born or Australian-born citizens who are native English speakers. They have been speaking their language from the time they were born. Hence, the need to have very good English language communication is mandatory. In New Zealand, almost 20 to 30% people find jobs through their professional or social network. If you want to build a good network in person or online, whether you use LinkedIn or whatever you use, you must have good English language communication standard that is kind of, understood. When you apply for jobs, you need good English language communication standards, once again, because you want the recruiter or the HR to be actually interested in interviewing you and considering you for the job. If you have good English language communication, in most cases, it will clearly reflect in the high confidence that you display during the interview process. And that makes it easy for employers to understand that, look, you're confident in expressing yourself, answering the questions, and they understand that you fit with their culture, work culture, and they employ you. When you apply for jobs, your cover letter, your CV, your resume will again reflect the written level of English and decide the fate of the job application at the very shortlisting stage. Hence, having English language high standards is kind of the key to finding a good job. Now, it's a known fact that most employers in New Zealand and Australia, and I'm sure this applies also to Canada or UK or US, they want employees who will fit well into their work culture. No employer wants a misfit employee who would be like a square peg in a round hole. The thing is, the work culture in New Zealand and Australia is very different from the work culture in India or South Asian country. Okay, so the work culture match here is very important. The employers desperately look that the applicant must have a work culture understanding. They must fit in the work culture, because if not, they have a misfit there. And that's why they require good English language communication, ability to blend in, integrate with other employees in the company. And always remember, we have people here from 120 different countries. So the only communication means is English language. That's very important to understand for those planning to go overseas. Now, there are many occupations in New Zealand and Australia which require occupational licensing. For example, teachers, nurses, doctors, barristers, architects, and so on. They need to apply for occupational licensing. And for that, the applicant must have excellent, not just good, but really excellent English language standard. Typically, they have to pass at least IELTS academic with minimum 7.0 score in each band. Some of them require even higher than that. And this is a mandatory criteria for such licensed occupations. The same applies actually in UK, US, and also Canada. Not only for jobs, when migrants apply for permanent residence, they must meet the English language requirements of Immigration New Zealand or Australian immigration requirements. When migrants apply for work and residence visas in New Zealand, Australia, they often have phone and verification interviews with immigration officers, which requires, again, excellent or good English communication, because if you can't express yourself to the officer, your application will have risk, actually. Now, we have found that the students who complete their higher studies in New Zealand, they fall into three categories. Now, this is something based on my 13 years of work, and also based on the surveys that we've seen from the industry. The top range are the migrants who get top job offers from leading reputed employers with high wages, and these are the top level wages that we can get in the market. These migrants or these students have excellent English language standard. They have taken the pain to increase their English standard to a high level. Then we have the mid-range, where you have the migrants who get average job offers from smaller employers, maybe not reputed employers, but yes, they are good employers with median English, with median wages. So the salaries are not the top bracket salaries, they are just at the median wage level. Now, these migrants have got, we find, average to good English, but not excellent. And then we have the lower range. The migrants who fall in the lower range, we find they struggle to find a job or a relevant job from employers. When they finally do get a job after a lot of hard work and job search, the salary they get is just above the minimum wage, which means they're not really getting paid for the job that they're doing. And these are the ones who are below average. They have below average English standard or low English standard. So as you can see, if you have English standard, which is just minimum IELTS requirement to, get offer of enrollment offer and get your visa, you may be just at the minimum IELTS 5.5 or 6.0 academic level. And that will not help you, because it will put you in the lower bracket. If you are at a little higher IELTS of 6.5 or something like that, you may go in the mid-range. But if you have IELTS of 7 to 8 range, academic, each band or overall, you're looking at excellent jobs, high-end salary, and good employers. Look, in conclusion, I'll say one simple thing. At every stage in the life of a migrant, having excellent English language standard is very critical to find a good job, to get occupational registration and licensing if you need one, to get career growth and good salary, and to be granted permanent residence in an English-speaking country. Being able to communicate in excellent or very good English is certainly not a choice for a migrant who is going overseas for education. It is a mandatory and compulsory requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. That, kind of motivates me a lot as an English educator because, at our senior secondary level, in most of the Indian schools, these children, they branch out into their commerce and humanities and science streams. And the focus that receives the least of their, focus, the subject that receives least of their focus is English. So, it kind of reminds us as educators, as principals and the students that it is the language, not just the importance of good English language. The question should be, is it the language for cracking SAT or making a career abroad? Thank you so much, sir. Ma'am Swati Singh, my next question goes for you, ma'am. That does the school or the school counselors provide enough information to students regarding SAT, and what improvements can the school inherit?
Ma'am, first of all, this question, I would like to build up a little bit of background to it, because SAT is not an exam for everybody. SAT is specifically aimed at students who are going or planning to study abroad in USA. Because for most of the other countries, SAT is not required for undergrad studies. USA universities and some Canadian and some other universities across the globe, very few in number, look for SAT scores as a part of their application package. So comprehensively, if I would be surprised if a counselor doesn't know about SAT per se, especially in A category towns in India. Maybe in B category towns, not so much, and C category towns, probably not. However, the knowledge of SAT should override first the knowledge for the counselor that how many students of their senior school are planning to go for study abroad, first of all. Because if a counselor comes to know of it at the very end of their 12th, that okay, now I'm thinking of applying for overseas education options also, and please write me an LOR or please do my Common App submission and all that, you are left in a very tight spot. What would you do about SATs at that point of time? So and here the school system in India comes into play, where we have especially in CBSE ICSE curriculums, where we have too much of a focus on senior classes for the internal competitive exams. So the students don't have a lot of time and focus to consider what they are going to do, what is their plan B, or if even if their plan B is going abroad for study, if it is clear to them also, they don't understand the timelines very clearly. They come too late in the day to the school counselor, if at all they approach the school counselor a little in advance to understand the nitty-gritties of SATs, the importance of SATs, or any other exam related to pursuing overseas education, be it IELTS or TOEFL or PT or SATs or anything else. So as a school counselor, the awareness of SAT might be there, but whether a student is aiming at a study abroad option at all is not something that schools really focus on. So the school counselors may be focusing on the academic pathway, mental health, various bullying issues, or various other copy completion and experiment submission and all those things. But they might not really know whether a student is aiming at anything other than a JEE Advanced or a NEET or a CLAT or CUET. So the problem starts at that point, because if a student wants that a teacher is supposed to write me an LOR. For any country, not just USA, it could be any country. The application package has an integral condition that a letter of recommendation has to be there from school counselor or from a teacher or from multiple teachers and counselors in combination. So first of all, students don't know about it. They come to know about it later, and when they realize that SAT is something that can take their application far in USA admissions specifically, by then they are a little late for the session. So ideally, SAT is conducted in India 5 times a year, and those 5 times start from April and last till December. And we know that our senior school students, the students who are in 12th grade, have back-to-back activities in their 12th grade, no matter which stream they are from. They have literally so packed schedule that they have to find a place to give an exam like SAT. Because SAT is not an exam where you can, just get up and go and write and be done with it. IELTS could be attempted like that. If you know the structure, if you've gone through a few YouTube tutorials, you are a current student with a good English background and good school system, you can crack IELTS in maybe 10-15 days preparation also. But SAT is not like that. You need at least a 3-month, 4-month preparation for that. So students first need to know what are the dates for SATs. They need to know that SAT results have to be pre-submitted to universities that they are planning to apply. For example, a student is planning to apply to 5 universities in USA, MIT or Ivy Leagues, any of the Ivy Leagues or UPenn or whatever. They have to pre-fill that in the SAT score submission. That I want these are my 5 universities my score should go to. Then free of cost, that 4 will go to those universities. Otherwise, for the same service, they will have to pay extra. So this is something that maybe, if students are not coming up to the counselor at the right time, school should have some kind of study abroad oriented session early in the 11th standard itself. Because 12th is too late to plan all these things. 11th is when they still have time. They will have one summer break, one winter break in which they can kind of bridge this thing in and plan their other exams and tutorials and various other internal school exams that happen. So it's important for schools to get involved at that level so that the actual admission success rate of student and good scores in SAT for the student happen. Because if a student is scoring somewhere in the range of 1300 out of a score of total score of 1600, it's not enough for a great admit. Anywhere 1450 plus is what a good admit looks at. So again, there are many pros and cons. There are many combinations that work and don't work. SAT is not a make or break point, and it is only for USA. So all those things matter. It is not that without SAT admissions won't happen. There are many universities which have made SAT test optional. ACT, SAT both are optional now or not required even. So grades still count for the most number of points you get towards your application. Then your teacher's recommendation, your essays, your extracurriculars, many things are there which form a good admission package. SAT is just one component for a USA admit. But still, it would be good if schools could, orient the students at earlier stages itself so that, they are better placed in their timeline. That's it. So it's not like schools are not aware. They're not aware that which students are planning to go. So in general, they should maybe make students aware about the process.
Thank you, ma'am. That cleared a lot of misconceptions, because a lot of school heads like me would not be aware of a lot of things like you enlightened us with. And a lot of, career counseling sessions in many of the schools that I have visited, or even in my schools, we do a lot of career counseling sessions in grade 12. But now we have more clarity that there might be some students who are planning to go abroad. So, we need to help them right from grade 11. and also
Right.
maybe customize some of the activities that they may want to participate in and may not, because looking at the kind of for future preferences that they might have. So as a school we can help them there. Thank you, ma'am. My next question is for Mr. Gautam Chokar. And sir, the question for you that I have is, what is the importance of good IELTS score for the grant of a student visa by the immigration officer?
Certainly, ma'am. And firstly, good evening, and such a pleasure to see you. And then I really also wanted to thank you, the Fair Gaze team. And I think Mr. Christie has really answered the question so well that it probably answers to my question as well. Now, coming back to probably what the question is, the importance of the IELTS score with regards to the visa thing. I think it is indeed, it's very important to have a very good IELTS score, because sometimes if the IELTS score is good, the visa department looks at it in a positive. Now, the other point is that English, it is very important for any students to be able to express themselves. It's a universal language, so it's important to have a very good English. A good English will be helpful not just in getting a visa, in completing their program, to be able to write well and read well, to assimilate in the society. And many visa in, like for example US and everything, they also have some interviews, so it's very important to have a good communication skill per se. So it's very important to have a good English, and if my English is good, then I'm normally expecting my IELTS score or SAT score or any other would be equally good. We also need to look into a factor that in many countries like US, UK, there are students who come from many countries where the English is not the native language. For example, people come from Korea, people come from Brazil, there are many South American students. They all are really very good. They all are exceptional, brilliant, but sometimes they lack in their communication skills. Sometimes they lack in their English skills. So it is very important to have a good English. And if I am able to have a very good English, then I can probably excel in my studies. I can communicate well, and then I can probably do my studies in a very nicer manner. So pretty much, yes, from a visa perspective, very important. Also, what it tells us is from the university's perspective, there are certain programs in which the English levels are, in which, for example, architecture, medicine, nursing, in which the level of English requirement is quite high. So the universities look at it in a positive manner if I have a very strong English. That goes, and then if I have a very good English, then also the visa department also looks at it in a positive manner. So yeah, it's important to have a good English, and then that transforms into a high English, high results in IELTS, or be it SAT, or be it there are TOEFLs. So pretty much yes. So I can.
Thank you so much, sir. As an English teacher, you cannot imagine the kind of thrill that I am going through. The importance of hail the English language sorts. Mr. John.
It is so very important. And then, sorry, I'm just adding on. But then once if I have my English is high, then probably what it does is once I go, there is a cohort of students. It helps me mix with the students, and then there's a life beyond,
adds a lot of value to your life. Lot of value to your life. So thank you, sir. Mr. John, I'll come back to you with this question, which says, what are the key areas where most students from India, other than South Asian countries, need improvement to become successful migrants in other English-speaking countries? Mr. John, you're on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yep. Can you hear me now? Right. So as discussed, having excellent English language standard is critical to getting a job offer, career growth, and becoming a resident. And also, like Gautam confirmed, you do require good English if you want, enrollment offer from a good premium university, or if you want your visa to be granted easily by an immigration officer. However, there are many other areas of improvement which are critical for migrants, especially to integrate in an English-speaking country. It doesn't matter whether you're going to USA from India, or you're going to Canada or Australia or New Zealand, UK. The top 5 English speaking countries, if you're going to these 5 countries, you certainly have to cover up on certain other areas of improvement. Now, this is not directly related to English. I'll be telling you in the very beginning only, but this is something, these are unwritten rules, these are unwritten requirements. You will not read them on any websites, on any places. But the thing is, this is based on experience. Look, I have also migrated to New Zealand 17 years back as a resident. And so this is based on experience, but it's also based on what we see every day, how our young migrants, especially from Asian countries, including India, they struggle. And this is something which will be very useful for your students because it'll help them to understand, what do I need to do? What is the thing I need to do first, basically to prepare myself rather than jumping on straight and going overseas. So migrants need to be able to adapt very strongly to the new culture. Look, since you're sitting 10,000 miles from in India, things are different. But when you actually reach the shores of New Zealand or Canada or Australia, everything is different. You are on Mars, basically, put it that way. You are on a new planet. The culture is different. Everything is different, A to Z. And there is no one here, your parents, your close family, your close friends, your teachers to support you or guide you on a day-to-day basis. So migrants need to know how to be able to adapt both professionally and from the social point of view, if they want to integrate into the country and live here. We see a lot of people living here from as long as 5 to 10 years, but they are still strangers. They are still not integrating into the country. And the reason for that is because they haven't done the homework. They haven't done the integration part. Now I'm going to cover a couple of different points. The first point I want to cover is adapting to the new teaching style. Now, we find that many international students struggle initially in New Zealand and Australia, and probably also in other countries like Canada and other countries, due to a very different teaching and learning style and methodology used here. Now, Indian students are primarily used to traditional classroom lectures, learning and teaching style, which means they attend the classrooms, they do their homework, and that leads to periodic assessments and final examinations. It's over. Whereas the teaching and the learning style in New Zealand and Australia involves only 50% classroom lectures. The remaining 50% includes weekly assignments, research, internship, industry projects, group study, and periodic assessments. And these contribute towards almost 50% of the marks that you score towards your final credits. So basically, things change every year. You are on your own. When you have to do your weekly assignment, plagiarism can wipe you out and make you lose even your enrollment. So you have to build everything on your own. You are on your own. You have to attend the classroom lecture, and then you're giving a topic. You have to do your research online or whatever way by reading, and then you have to write your assignment of 1,000-page words or whatever it might be. This is all independent work. It means you basically have to do a lot of hard work on your own. Now, when students get thrown into here and they don't know how to deal with it, we have found that quite a lot, I would say sometimes as high as 20% students or 30% students struggle. And when they struggle, they don't pass their examinations or assignments. They fail in the examinations. They fail in the assignment. They don't do the project work or whatever they have to do. And when they don't get marks there, they don't pass their, their qualification. And then they come back to us and say, I failed. I want another visa. And it gets extremely hard for us to get them further visas, student visas, because they didn't pass the first semester or the second semester out of 3 years or 2 years. So it's very important that students should know that they have to learn to adapt. Now, another important thing, both for students and for migrant workers, is that they must build a network in this country. Look, this is not your home country. This is not where you were born. You are starting a new life. It's a challenge. So you need to build from scratch. It's like building a house from the foundation level. You need a strong professional network, either online or preferably in person, which could be helpful when you are seeking new career opportunities or changing your jobs. You must try to join professional or social group, which could help you to build actually a network of, professionals in the country. Another very important thing I want to tell students coming here is do not burn your bridges. When you are changing your employers, a lot of people, when they change jobs, they leave with a bad taste in the mouth of both the employee and the employer. What they don't understand is you are not in India anymore, where the population is 1.4 billion. You're talking about a population of 5 million or 25 million in Australia or 5 million in New Zealand. You would be dealing again with that employer or that person again in your lifetime if you want to live there. Building a lasting relationship with your last employer or your current employer or manager is critical, as you might need them again and again in the future, maybe for a job reference check or maybe for an immigration verification process. And that makes it very important. We see that a lot of people don't understand this. Another thing I want to touch base upon is diversity-based integration. Now, we have seen this all the time. Everyone knows this. When Indians come to New Zealand or Australia, their best friends, their only friends are Indians. And worse still, if they are from Punjab, their friends are Punjabis. If they are from Gujarat, their friends are Gujarati. If they are from Bengal, West Bengal, their friends are Bengalis, and so on and so forth. They do not integrate. They do not make an effort to meet with other people, not just from the same country and different state, but also from other countries. Look, we have people here from 120 different countries or more, in fact. So migrants need to try to build a network with people of different ethnicities in different countries. Join local migrant groups, which will enable you to meet other migrants from diverse countries. It could be from Brazil, could be from, American countries, South American, could be from African countries or from other countries in the world. It'll help you to grow and integrate as a successful migrant. This is a very important thing, because what happens is when your flatmates are from your country, and for an Indian person, if it is an Indian flatmate, they work for an Indian employer, their colleagues are Indians, then basically their whole life is around people of the same country. What they don't understand is you will never be able to integrate with Australia or New Zealand or Canada, for that matter, if you don't merge and integrate and blend yourself with other people. Could be whether it's Chinese, a Filipino, or Brazilian, or whatever it might be. It's a very, very important thing. One more thing I want to tell people who come here is you need to know your rights. Now, when you go into a new country, you don't know the rules, but look, you need to slowly make an effort to learn the rights, your legal rights as an international student to protect yourself, or as a migrant worker to protect yourself and not get exploited, or when you sign any legal contract like employment agreements or tenancy agreements, before you sign them, read them. It's simple English. And if it's complex for you, go and take an independent legal advice for a small fee. But if you don't do that, you could end up very often in being exploited or manipulated by, the employer or your landlord or somebody. So these are very important. Another thing to remember is we are a country with 100 plus diverse people from 100 plus diverse different, countries. And you need to learn to work and live with them. So migrants must adapt to the inclusive culture at both workplace and society. And they should be culturally sensitive in a multicultural environment. Last point, I'm just going to cover this quickly, and I've taken more time, is develop life skills. Now, this is so important. I can't stress more on this. Look, it's a well-known fact that typically Indian parents shield and protect their children, including 18 plus aged and young adults. They protect them compared to parents from a Western culture. I'm not saying that throw them out. What I'm saying is when these young adults who are living with their parents, they have never done any jobs. They have never done any volunteer work. They have no idea about practical money skill. They don't know how to deal with the real life problem. They're not familiar with how the real world survives in the real jungle. They depend totally on the mom and dad to take decisions for their life. When these children, these young adults of 18 years and 22 years are thrown into a new country to study there, they have no one there. They are in a real world, in a new country with no local family support. they often get lost. There's a culture shock. They find it hard to adapt, find it hard to integrate. They struggle with study. They have all kind of problems. So it's really important that they should be actually building life skills. Having lived in New Zealand, Australia for more than 20 years and seeing the struggle of young migrants coming here, especially from South Asian countries and India, I believe it is important that young migrants develop life skills even before they travel here or soon after they reach here by finding mentors. It will help you greatly to integrate well and live as successful migrants in a new country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Your answer gave a lot of food for thought for us because, a lot of progressive schools in the country are focusing on life skills. And the new curriculum framework that has been launched recently by the CBSE, the Central Board of Secondary Education, focuses that every assessment should be based on some assignment or fieldwork that the child gets engaged into, and that should have some credit point system. So I am hopeful as an educationist and as a principal that things might improve, but the reality that you are showcasing to us is that we need to work more as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, bringing in new methodologies. We see it everywhere in our schools these days, but maybe that is still not enough. So we'll probably put more thought into that. And moving on, my next question goes to Ms. Swati Singh. Ma'am, how relevant is the SAT exam?
Ma'am, SAT exam, as I earlier mentioned, is very specifically for USA bound students, undergrad USA bound students only, and few universities in Canada and other overall globe look for the scores if they are available. And on the application process of USA itself, now almost 800 plus universities and colleges have dropped SATs from their required list. So what that means for students is that it is no more a mandatory document for these universities at least. It is now an optional. If provided, they will review it. If not provided, they will not be assessed negatively for lack of it. So which is very, very important that students understand that whether they actually need to do it or not. It's an investment of time and money, and a lot of frustration builds up when you don't score that 1400 plus score on SAT, which is actually the score that matters. Anything under that is really not that relevant, and I sometimes even suggest students not to submit scores below that level if they have it. So now that the USA itself is questioning SAT, ACT scores in the admission process, for international students, they have to look at it like that, that when we are as education consultants doing the profiling of the student based on their academics, extracurriculars, and other performance indicators, we do a long list of universities where the student is actually eligible to apply to, and then student may do further shortlisting that okay, these are the areas or these are the programs or these are the universities that look more appealing to me, and I want to stick to these 5-7 universities. Now, if those 5-7 universities don't have SAT as a mandatory requirement, why should I push one document extra for my student? One thing is that. Now, still, if I feel that it is going to make some impact, that impact will probably be at the financial level. So if a student is a financial aid dependent student, then it might be a good idea to have as many additional documents as possible to prove that they are having something beyond the competition. So if a student is looking at a scholarship very keenly, because scholarships are not a guaranteed thing. They depend on a lot of factors. They depend sometimes even on ethnicities. There are country-specific scholarships. There are merit-based scholarships. There are various scholarships. Now, if in a particular university there is a merit-based scholarship, then I would say that go for as much build up on your resume as possible. You put up your certifications, put up a good, excellent essay, put up additional letters of recommendation, and put up SAT scores if they are very good. On the other hand, if they're not great or not even average, then it might do more harm than good. So it would be better not to put them up at all. For any other student who's aiming at any other country, Not really. SAT doesn't have any relevance. So if you're USA bound, you're very clear that I want to study in a US university at a particular level of USA university. Then SAT, look at the requirements of tests that that university is doing mandatorily. Then look at the scholarships that they are giving out. Do you think that having a great SAT score will make a difference in a university where not asking for SAT at all? Now, these are very, very subjective options, and we need to have a discussion with student and their families when we are doing that shortlisting itself. So, relevance of SAT is there. It is not as much as it was a few years back, and going forward, it might go down a little more. Reasons are various. SATs are being made kind of optional or not required because of USA's internal dynamics, where they feel that SATs might be discriminatory. SATs might be favoring those who are having additional help in prepping. The students, people like the parents coming from financially affluent backgrounds, where they can afford to have additional tutoring for SATs, whereas a student coming from a minority community or from an impoverished background might not have that help, and then SAT becomes a discriminatory practice. So if there are grades which are standardized grades in their country, that is USA, and a student is being anyways judged on grades basis, then there are teachers recommendation, then there are community service, extracurriculars, many other things. Why do you even need SAT to have one more additional element of stress and conflict in a student's portfolio? So these are their internal dynamics and discussions. We at India are getting a benefit out of it actually, because huge amount of universities have dropped SATs and or made it test optional. Again, this is happening even at the graduate level, where GRE is being dropped for students bound for graduate studies. So in a way, these internal policy changes at USA are benefiting Indian students or international students somewhere. SATs are not losing relevance, but SATs are uh, losing the pie, the share in the pie that it had earlier. So if earlier SAT was valued at maybe 40-45% of the total pie chart of grades and LORs and SOPs and everything, now it is maybe 20-25%, not more than that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It brings a lot of relief at one point of time, but at the other side, it just should not be treated as something that is not to be paid importance to. So I hope that, everybody who's aspiring to take the SAT exam is also, finds balance in your, through your answer. And the last
But
question
the
goes to...
importance is that, I'm sorry, just one thing. The importance is that if you're attempting it, do it at an exemplary level, do it very well, or don't do it. You are good either way, but having a mediocre score like 1300 or 1330 or 1280 is neither here nor there. You are just wasting time and money.
That's true. Very well said. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Choka, my last question goes for you. What's the importance of a good IELTS score to receive a suitable enrollment offer from a reputed educational provider?
Thanks, Charu, ma'am. And absolutely, it's very important to have a very good high IELTS score. And when I say of high IELTS score, probably the base benchmark would be 7 each across all the platforms, and 7 out of 9. I'm talking about where 9 is probably good, and 7 is probably, so if the higher I get, the better it is. So I can give you a couple of examples here. For example, if somebody is going to study health sciences program or architecture program or similar, in which the level of English requirements is quite high, then the minimum expectations is achieving a band score of 7 out of 9, and that's the minimum requirements. Of course, you can do well. Now, as we say in English, in an IELTS score, there are 4 bands: reading, writing, listening, and the speaking. And then they would ideally want 7 across all and then 7 across all the 4 bands. And the universities will prefer that one takes a single sitting of IELTS or a PTE, so that it's like they wouldn't want that somebody combines or couples 2 IELTS or the 2 PTEs and then say I've got 7 in one test and then the 7 in one test. So it's very important. in many circumstances, we have had looked at the students' percentage in year 12 wasn't very good. For example, they probably got 60, 65%, but then their IELTS score is very high. Then the universities look at it in a very positive manner. Whereas if the students' marks are probably in the mid 60s or probably is not a very strong academics in terms of his results, but his IELTS score is also poor, then it does make an impact and it's very difficult for them to get an admission. So these are some of the factors. I also look at, for example, from an Indian perspective, there are, or in any country, there is always some high risk areas. And like there can be certain regions in which the ease of getting a visa, if I come from Delhi, hypothetically, it's not a high risk area, but then there are certain regions in India which probably can be a high risk. So if the first thing what as a university or the visa officer, what they look at is probably what was the percentage of those students in their year 12th or their undergraduation, what they have studied. And then what's the underlying factor is how good are they in their English. So be it PTE, and then the higher the English level, the results, the better, the more confident is the education provider that yes, the student is probably a good student and they can fare well in the studies in Australia, New Zealand, wherever they intend to study. And then it happens is if, for example, if a student hasn't done well in year 12th, hypothetically in their studies, then they also can ask questions, okay, what was the reason why probably you haven't done well? Maybe somebody was sick or something like that. So it's important to have a good IELTS score, of course, not only just to meet the entry requirements. Then in many cases, for example, as I mentioned earlier, there are many visas thing, embassies or the universities, they take interview of the clients, of the prospective students. So higher the English, higher the IELTS, the better it is, the more confident will be the applicant in clearing those exams and stuff like that. So pretty much, yes. The another factor which I can also mention is what happens is sometimes we can look at two classic examples. If I'm a good student, I'm going for to study, let's say mechanical engineering, and then my IELTS score is about 8877, no problems, easy to get a visa or easy to get an offer letter from an education provider. Now I look at the another thing, whereas I'm a class 12 pass out, my percentage is just about 60 or hanging in around there, and I want to study hospitality management. Now, if my IELTS score, if my English score is probably just about average, then the education provider will be a bit reluctant in giving me an admission, because then they feel that, yes, what are the genuine intentions? Because then they're thinking from the visa perspective. But now, hypothetically, a student comes up, he says, look, I've got 55 and 60 in my academics, but my IELTS is really good. And my interest lies in those specific areas. I want to do very well in hospitality management, and then there's a rationale for doing that. Then the education providers looks into it. They looks into the statement of the purposes, and it's easier to get an offer. And once we probably get an admission, then the chances of getting a visa is quite high. So just to add on to what you think, it's very important to have a good IELTS score. What I'm interpreting is if I have a good IELTS score, it means technically I have good English and I can complete my studies well too. Pretty much, yeah. And yeah, I think this should be suffice, and unless you want me to add more.
No, thank you, sir. That's your wish. If you need to add any more points, we are here to learn from all of you. And that brings us to the end of the question and answer round. And I have made my notes. If I kind of get an opportunity to share my screen, I could show you there are some bullet points, which means that no particular point is, at priority. All the points are important, and some are like, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so much of learning, so much to take back from all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fair Gaze, for giving me this opportunity. Gauri, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a really well-timed moderation, and kudos to you and the panelists. So we had some questions which we received in the forms. So if I have the permission, may I go with them?
Yes, please, please, please.
Sure.
So there is an interesting question. Someone is asking, what is the difference between an IELTS essay and a normal essay?
understand the question, it's what's the difference between an IELTS essay
Yes, sir.
and when we say
And
essay,
a
is
novel.
it ESSAY or?
ESSAY, right, right.
Okay. So probably I do not know what the context was, but I can try and answer is probably in IELTS, there are 4 sections. One of the section could be a writing module of it, in which I probably have to write on it. And then in IELTS, there are generally 2 versions of it. One is the academic version and one is the general version of it. General version is generally you take when you want to migrate to any particular country or if you want to work there. You normally undertake IELTS academic if you have to take study, be it US, UK, Canada, or Australia, anything. In one of those, the writing section, they normally ask you to write an essay. And in that essay, it is in which they judge your things as what kind of the how professional can you write? Are you using good jargons and something like? Can you compare those maps, demographics, and is it what level it is? And then are you using the right words? How good it is? So it's important to. And in writing, it's very important to have very good professional or good grammatical English. And the higher, the better it is. And if I use good, I mean, strong words, I probably haven't given an IELTS exam. So, but then if I can actually write it better, then my IELTS score will actually go up. So that's what I can say from this question.
I can add something to that, Gautam. Basically, the motive behind that essay is to understand when you actually study internationally, are you able to write essays or assignments on your own? Because a lot of times plagiarism is happening, right? People try to copy from friends or their classmates, and that cannot be accepted. So basically, it's your ability to write, on an open topic. They might give you a topic, maybe they can give you a topic, the Ukraine-Russia war. Now you want to write on that, there's nothing there from copy and paste on Google. It's basically your mind working there. So you need to be able to write on your own words. And it's not only that, it's also the ability to, stay on the topic, keep the number of words, and then of course things like grammar, and other stuff that you have to. So that is the part that the reason they're looking for that is to understand, can this student actually understand what has to be done and study? Because look, in New Zealand and Australia, I know I have got students. My own daughter was studying last year here. She's a New Zealand resident, of course, but she was studying here and she had assignments, sometimes 3 assignments in a week. Every single day there's an assignment. So basically you are spending 3 hours, 4 hours writing an assignment. So that's the amount of writing that you have to do basically. And so that's why they need those essays.
Awesome, sir. Thank you so much for answering that question. Even though that student will be seeing the recording, but as you have answered me, and I believe that you have answered it very well. So when the student watches the recording, they'll also get their answer. So thank you so much, Gautam
You're
sir and
welcome.
Christy sir. Thank you, sir. So first of all, I want to share that my favorite subject is also English. So I was as happy as Charu ma'am when we were discussing about the importance of English here and about the IELTS test specifically. And as I'm supposed to summarize the discussion, so I was also taking down notes and I would summarize it for the audience also. So first of all, I learned that it's very important to put your emphasis on the English language. That is my favorite language. Your job and the university is determined by your communication skills and English language standards. And talking about the SAT test, it is mainly for the students who are going to America for their education. And it's very wise to well plan it if you want to give SAT, because you need at least 3 to 4 months for the preparation, even though IELTS can be cleared with a minimal score of 7 in about 15 or so days. And for the school counselors, it's a good advice to explore the student interest beforehand so that they can help the student prepare. SAT has very less relevance in today's time, but it is still important. And so a student should be really wise when they're planning to give it or not. And something from Christie's sir's lines, I was noting down the points where I realized it's important for a student who's going outside, for an immigrant, to adapt to the teaching style. Integration, there is a problem of integration because of cultures. So there should be a mindset, an open mindset, through which you're able to adapt, and also you're able to integrate with the people who are living there, adapt to the teaching style. And it's important to do your homework. Building network and building lasting relationships is really important, and there is a need of diversity based integration, and you should know your rights. And the most important thing in any country is to develop life skills. So I hope I summarized it well.
Yep.
Thank you so much. So this
Absolutely. Can I just add on one more thing, Ms. Gauri? I mean, firstly, the best wishes to you for your future studies. And I'm really impressed by your, they call it as a backdrop or what, the screen things. And you've got the Darling Harbor and then the famous Harbor Bridge behind you. And it's so good that you're promoting our country. I'm look forward to that.
Wow, thank you so much, sir, for being so observant. And yes, it's one of my favorite backgrounds and a lucky one. So I'm great I'm promoting your country through it. And yes, if anyone has anything to add, you're free to free to add up, and then we'll end with the session.
Well, I had lots of fun asking questions and interacting with a lot of eminent people here. Thank you so much, Gauri. Congratulations to you. Every time I come on Fair Gaze, sometimes as moderators, many a times as one of the speakers, you are, your happy face lights up the entire session. So, and Mansi in the background, always smiling, and in the background we are chatting, everything going okay. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Ma'am, you've joined. You've logged out. So you people do it really well, and the fact that you people broadcast the entire thing on Fair Gaze on your Facebook page and Insta page gives a lot of opportunity to a lot of people who cannot join in live and can watch it later. It can be shared. I think that's something very good. You all doing great work. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
I'll
you
just
so
add
much.
one line, last thing, that if you're going to an English-speaking country, remember that, there's a saying, when you are in Rome, you got to do as Romans do. So when you go to a country where they speak English, remember that is your universal language in the country, and you are competing directly for everything, right from jobs, growth, or whatever you want, with citizens of that country who are native English speaker. They've been speaking the language from the day they're born. So you naturally have a challenge ahead of you. And so take that as a challenge, but remember, don't be late. Don't reach the country and then start working on that. I would say that I tell my clients, we have a lot of offshore clients who come here to study and other things. We tell them, do not start your journey to study overseas until you have become proficient in English, whether attend some IELTS coaching or whatever you wish to do, spend some money on that, 3 months, 6 months, if different for different people, write an exam, you have online tests, you've got coaching and all, and see how good you are, or where are your weak areas of improvement. Once you find those areas of improvement, whether you are having problem in speaking or reading or writing, listening, and the most important are writing, we have a lot of people because of the academic reasons. And you need to pass IELTS with really excellent score in each band. And just like Gautam said, you want a good, enrollment, or you want a visa, you have to do it. So you need to really do that. It's the same for all English-speaking countries. Not only that, look, if you're going to Germany, you need to know about German language. The same way, when you come to English-speaking country, you need to know about that. So that's something very universal, and it's very critical. It's actually more important than SAT. I've seen a lot of students have, in the survey, they said it is more important than SAT, which is really true, because if your SAT scores are great, but your English is not good, you will have difficulty in even getting a visa, or completing a study, or getting a job. So work on English first. Once English becomes great, everything will be a cakewalk for you.
Yes, I think you're very right, sir, because, when we even visit a place as travelers, we always, do a background check, and we kind of get to know about the history of the place, and we always make an itinerary. So I think if you're planning a career in a country, I think it's a mandate to kind of do a, proper study and be well prepared for it. And when I used to go to Chennai years ago, I had my office headquarters over there. I remember, even the auto walas and these rickshaw pullers, I used to go to the market nearby. nearby from my hotel, and English used to be the language. I mean, they used to understand English, and I had a challenge in interacting, and I learned Tamil, you know, a little bit, so I could interact, but the first language of communication was English. So yes, it is the language of communication. It's high time that people realize that it's a language also to connect you, and it builds confidence, no doubt. So, and then if you keep on reflecting on where you stand as a person, intellectually, professionally, and even, I mean, if you be a little bit mindful, that, and the onus lies on the school educators, because we are the ones who are, you know, imbibing the life skills of self-reflection, decision making, you know, quick thinking. So a lot of onus lies on us. So huge responsibility on the educators.
Absolutely, ma'am and sir. You're pretty much right about it. English does have an importance, and it's good to know your native language, but you should be globally aware and know how to speak English so that you're able to communicate your thoughts and your opinions to the world. So, very well said. And once again, I would like to thank all the panelists and our dear moderator. This, dear viewers, leads us to the end of our Fair Talk session organized by Fairgaze. And before signing off, we would like to thank all our virtual audience. For such interesting webinars and sessions, stay connected with Fairgaze with such engagements concerning the school ecosystem. You can get the updates through our website at www.fairgaze.com or through our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much, all. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Gauri. Bye bye.
Thank you,
Good
Gauri.
evening, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Charu,
Machi.
Gautam,
Bye bye.
Thank you so
Manshi.
much, ma'am and
Nice meeting you
sir.
all. Have a good day.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Thank you so much, Manshi, ma'am.
Thank you, Gauri.